2025 was such a great reading year for me. It was kind of like my first year of aiming to read consistently, and in today's video I thought I would share with you all of the books that I rated 5-star in 2025. There are a total of 22 books. I do have 19 books physically in front of me, but I do have 3 that I read either through Libby or through an e-arc. So I think I'm gonna go through the digital version that I don't have physically first, and then we'll go through the rest of the physical book that I have in front of me. This is in no particular order, but I did kind of separated the physical books into the different genre. So let's just get started. I'm gonna start with The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai. I think that is how you pronounce the author's last name. But this book was really great, and I think it's because the Indian American found family and Indian American community vibe that is throughout the book. I just love all of the aunties trying to get involved and the female main character's love life, and how we see a little bit of this kind of like not really quite arranged marriage that we've seen in some Indian cultures in the past, but I guess it's just kind of like a marriage setup. Like, the female main character is definitely of age. She is ready to be married. Her dad kind of provided a list of potential husbands that she can meet and maybe date, but there's this kind of like rule where the male relative has to be present in this kind of like meetups. So this guy, who is technically renting an office space from her dad, offered to help her through these meetings because her dad is not available at this time. And it was just a very cute story, and I just, like I said, love the Indian American community vibe throughout the book. It is the first book in the series. I haven't really got a chance to read the next book in the series, but I definitely want to. It's all kind of related to weddings and finding a husband or finding like a spouse, I guess, in general, and I really like those type of theme in a book. So I might think about maybe getting into the next book in the series because I just love the first book. The other book that I read digitally was The One Before the One by Emma Cooper. I'm pretty sure she is a British author. I was browsing NetGalley one day, and the premise of this book was just very interesting. It has a little bit of a magical realism into it because the FMC actually traveled back in time. I think 7 years ago, her current fiance went missing, and on the day of her wedding day to a different man, she stepped out of her hotel room, I believe, and she basically instantly went back 7 years. I believe it was a few days before her ex-fiance that went missing actually went missing. So she was trying to see if she can convince him to stay home that day when he went missing, and hopefully we'll get him back in like the current day of her life. I just love how the author tells the story. It was just mysterious. There's chapters from different POV, and it wasn't really clearly stated whose POV we're reading, and after a few chapters it was revealed whose POV it was, and it was just kind of surprising to me. The ending though, it was kind of like flat. I felt like I thought there's something more kind of like dramatic that should have happened but didn't. But overall, I really do enjoy the book. I remember reading this book probably pretty quickly because I was just curious on what happened to the missing fiance 7 years ago. Why did he disappear? Like, can she actually convince him to stay and actually bring him back? You know, because after you've been missing for 7 years, people assume you were dead. I was just super intrigued to see how the ending would play out. Like I said, the plot twist was just kind of like flat to me, especially also the ending, but overall it was still a pretty good read. I honestly never really heard about this author, and I don't think I've heard about people talking about this book specifically. Now that I talk about this book, I think I might look into this author's other books. The other book that I read, I think I borrowed this from Libby. It was The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. This is, I want to say, a literary fiction or maybe like a woman's fiction with a romance subplot. This book again was also super cute. If you are looking into a book that has that heartfelt, wholesome story, I think you would really love it. It was kind of set in a small town, I think in a countryside in London, I believe. The main character of this book, I forgot her name. She worked at the library as a library assistant. She was kind of like following her mom's path because her mom used to also work at this library. Because it is a small town, the library that she's working at was in the middle of potentially being closed because there's not enough funding. And when that news broke throughout the community, everybody who's patrons of this library was trying to fight for the library to stay open. One, because everybody always go to this library every single day. Like in the beginning of the book, you learn who's coming in at certain time, and the main character has to kind of help them out, finding something, finding a book, a magazine, or even turning on the computer to use the computer and stuff like that. It just had a lot of different characters, and of course eccentric ones because it is a small town setting. It also has really great fun family. Our main character's mom actually passed away, I think maybe not too long ago, and that kind of makes her stay where she is because she's kind of too afraid to move on and like do things with her life and stuff like that. We also have, like I said, a very small romance subplot between the main character with like a childhood friend that she used to be friends with, but now that they're adults, he actually moved to London, I believe, to work, and he just came back home temporarily because his dad was supposed to go to surgery and he's trying to help his dad recover at home. The love interest is also Asian. His family owned kind of like a Chinese takeaway place in this small town, and it was just really cute, especially because they were kind of exchanging book recommendations, and they were just kind of like giving recommendations of book genre that they both don't really read, but it's like the other's favorites. So I think it was just really cute. So if you're looking for a book about a book about a librarian, I think you should definitely pick The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. Okay, I know that I said that I kind of separate this into different genre, but I feel like these first 4 books are, I guess you can classify them as mystery thriller, and I guess this one is fantasy, but let's go with the first kind of like mystery thriller horror type of book. These are the genre that I don't really usually read, and as you can tell from this stack, I only have 3 books in this genre. The first one is Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. I devoured this book within like a day because it was just funny and I was just very intrigued, and I cannot stop flipping the pages to figure out what happens next. A lot of people, I feel like, have similar thoughts about this book. They always think like, how can this thing happen to her and she's not being like found out or caught by somebody else, which is kind of like what I ask almost throughout the book. But I feel like that's the way that make this book so fun and just so funny as well. I just feel like some of the things that happen are just kind of like silly, and it's kind of like a coincidence that things happen in front of her but nobody really be suspicious of her. It was just a very fun kind of like cozy mystery book. I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. I was planning to read the second book last year, but I didn't get a chance to. But if you don't know what this book is all about, it's basically about Finlay, who is a single mom of 2. She actually a mystery writer, and she went out to lunch with, I believe, her literary agent, and they were kind of discussing about things that would happen in her mystery book. And I guess somebody overheard her thinking that Finlay was a contract killer and kind of slip her a name, a phone number, and like an amount of money, and that woman kind of like subtly tell Finlay to off her husband, and that is just how the story goes. I really do enjoy this book. Like I said, I finished this in a day, so that is how good this book was for me, at least. I really love this book. The other book that I feel like I read because it was definitely overhyped. Everybody was saying that this book was great. At the time when I read it, the movie adaptation was coming out. It's already out. I believe it was out last December, and it was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, and I did not expect to actually like this book, but this is one of the other books that I devoured in one day. The writing is just, they flow so nicely and I just enjoy it. And I did not expect the plot twist of this book, and especially the ending. I think it was kind of insane and unhinged. I don't really read a lot of this type of psychological thriller horror book, so anything that happened is kind of like unexpected for me. But to be honest with you, this book was just great. I think the writing is amazing. I know that people are saying that Freida McFadden comes out with like so many books in a year and some of her books are not as great, but I do have all of the books in the Housemaid series, so I'm hoping to continue onto the second book hopefully this year. I know that I said I was gonna watch this movie as well because I read the book and I kind of know what's gonna happen, but I haven't watched the movie yet. Maybe I will watch it eventually when it comes to one of the streaming services that I have, but I heard that the movie is also pretty great, so we shall see. If you don't know The Housemaid, I feel like everybody knows it by now, but basically Millie was hired to work at the Winchester's household as like a live-in maid. Things got twisty from there. Her boss, Nina, who is like the wife, was kind of like crazy, and she was portrayed as just like someone who kind of like lost her mind a long time ago. It was kind of crazy how twisty it was, and like I said, because I don't really read a lot of book from this genre, it was just very unexpected for me, and that is why I feel like the book was really great. If you are maybe a mystery thriller avid reader, this might just be like okay for you, but to me it was a great book. The other book that I feel like I don't really expect to like is Julie Chen is Dead by Lian Zhang. This is a debut novel by this author, and oh my gosh, I love this book so much. This was one of my most anticipated book of 2025. I've heard about this book obviously in the beginning of 2025. This book came out in April and I was just like, the premise is just really good. I really want to read it, and I was able to get the e-arc for this book, but I decided to buy the physical copy because I love this book so much. This one is basically about twin sisters Julie and Chloe. They were raised together, but I think when they were 4 or 6, one of them, Chloe, was adopted and Julie stayed with her relative. I guess Chloe eventually became a very famous influencer and stuff like that, and one day Julie got a phone call from Chloe that is kind of weird, and Julie just had this feeling that something is wrong, so she went into Chloe's apartment in New York and found that Chloe is not alive. And when people came over, like the police and stuff, they thought that Julie was Chloe. Kind of play into that, you know, oh my gosh, my twin sister Julie is dead, even though that is Julie that is still alive and Chloe is the one who died. Anyways, Julie entered like Chloe's life because Chloe has a great apartment in New York, has this reputation to kind of keep up, so Julie is trying to become Chloe eventually. But I guess after being Chloe for a little bit, Julie found out that she is kind of in this influencer circle that is kind of like weird, and I don't know, like they have like a very off vibe within them, and things go down toward the end of the book that is super unhinged, and I definitely did not expect things that happen into that section of the book would happen. Like I did not expect that at all, and I just feel like the delivery of it is just amazing. Like I said, I don't really venture into horror or mystery or thriller that often, so I feel like anything that happens that, you know, if you're an avid reader of that genre, might not be like super great, but I think it is great. Like the writing itself is also pretty great, and I have been telling Leanne anytime, like I mean I'm not friends with her or anything, but like anytime I tag her on my post about this book, I always tell her like, I cannot wait for your next book because your writing is great. I cannot wait to read more, and I have a feeling that her next book is gonna be as great as this one, if not greater. So another book that I feel like it's not a genre that I would really read is Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle. This one is also one of the debut novel that I read this year. This one is Sent to Me by Simon & Schuster, and I picked it up probably toward the middle of 2025, and I am so glad that I did. I want to say that this book is kind of like an urban fantasy because things that happen in this book is kind of like a fantasy, but it's not really set in like the olden time, I guess. This is set in like a modern time, but this is about our main male character who can actually taste like a spirit's favorite flavor, and if he created that flavor, whether it's like a drink or like a meal, the spirit will appear. And that is kind of how the book started. He's trying to make this thing like a business so he can connect the living loved one to the dead one, so the dead can basically move on, because the spirits that he's connecting with has like some unfinished business. So that's why he wants to reconnect the dead to the living loved ones. He's been kind of doing this on the side a few times, and he's not really realizing that what he did kind of like messed up with the balance of things. And I feel like that is the interesting part of this book. There's also a romance subplot between him and this girl, and this girl is also eccentric in my opinion. She has tried to go back to the dead world, I guess, multiple times. And the concept of that, I feel like it's kind of new, at least to me. She did it with different like methods, which is kind of interesting. And that is kind of how she has like the context of this limbo world where she's kind of like dead but not really. It was just very interesting, and I cannot stop thinking about this book after I finished reading it. I feel like I kind of want to reread it eventually, but if you have heard about this book and if you are kind of on the verge of picking it up or not, I would say pick it up, read it. And I don't know, like I said, I kept thinking about this book. I think it has such great writing and also great concept. It's one of the most unique books I think I've read in 2025. And again, every time I post about this book, and I also tagged Daria and I told her like I cannot wait for the next book. So that is kind of like the first category of like genre that I don't really read. So the next one, I think I'm gonna do the YA books that is 5-star rate for me. Let's start with the first one. It is XOXO by XCO. I found out about XCO because I went to this one indie bookstore in Vegas, and the owner, I think, or the manager was telling me that XCO is a local author. I went into Instagram and followed her, and it's true that she lives in Vegas. So I decided to pick up this book, I think from that indie bookstore crawl that I did, I think in April or something of 2025. And this book is so cute. This is the book that made me so happy whenever I read it. There are some kind of maybe like sad-ish part, but it's not super sad that it will make you cry. If you are a fan of the Korean pop culture, like K-pop idol, and all of that, like the trainee, like how, you know, before you become an idol and you debut yourself or the group into the world, like you are training as a K-pop idol, I guess. And this book is kind of all about it, or at least she goes to this boarding school in Korea where all of the students or most of the students are talented. Like they are either wanting to be a K-pop idol or a Korean actor or actresses and stuff like that. So it was just really, really cute. It has this found family element that is kind of unexpected. I feel like when you hear about boarding school, it's basically for the rich, right? Because it's like, oh, my parents are so rich and so busy, they just basically dropped me off at this boarding school. In this book, you kind of found some characters that are snobby at first, but then they kind of like became friends and they found kind of like their own group of people who understand each other. It was just really cute. Even though this is a YA romance because they are in high school, I don't feel like I was too old to read about it. I think the characters are very mature, and yes, the issues that they come across might be a little bit more juvenile, but I think it's still really cute. The next one that I read was Fake Skating by Lynn Painter. I actually got the physical arc of this from the Simonton Influencer program. I am planning to get the physical book whenever they have the Barnes & Noble edition of it, because all of my Lynn Painter's YA books have the sprayed edges, and it was the Barnes & Noble edition. Anyways, this one is about Danny and Alec. They are childhood best friends. Alec lives in Danny's mom's kind of like hometown where she grew up in. Both of their moms were best friends in high school, I believe, and they still keep in contact, so they usually visit each other in the summer. Danny's dad is actually in the military, so they move around a lot, and it was kind of hard for her to find, you know, friends. And I feel like Alec is the one constant in Danny's life, the one constant friend, because they always see each other in the summer. And I think the senior year of their high school, Danny's parents decided to get a divorce, and Danny's mom decided to move into this town. She just wants to live in an area where she's familiar with it, and basically Danny's grandpa is kind of like taking them in. And because Danny and Alec haven't really been in contact for some years, they were trying to kind of ease back into their friendship. And I just think this book is so cute. Again, it has really profound found family vibe. Danny has been moving around. She doesn't really have friends that she can kind of like lean on, and she kind of find it within this community. The characters are in high school, but I don't feel like I'm too old to read it. I just feel like the characters are very mature. It kind of gives me similar vibe to XOXO because both of the female main characters are kind of like plop into a new environment, a new school, and there might be potential like enemy or like mean girls, but they actually became friends, good friends. And you know, like again, the fun family aspect is just really great in these two books. Next is gonna be The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I did give this book a 5-star, only the first book though, because I just feel like there's just so much going on in this book. I love the kind of like love triangle or potential love triangle in the first book. You obviously learn about Belly and the brothers, and I just feel for Belly because she is the only girl in like this friend group and she got left out a lot. This book I feel like also doesn't have only the story of the kids, but it also has stories about the parents and how sometimes even though you're parents and you have kids and you're all adults, you still struggle with stuff. You still have to, you know, get through some issues and some hardships, and it's not easy sometimes. I don't know, I just love the first book so much. I feel like the second and third book are just okay to me. This one just has a lot more kind of like depth into it, I feel like, and I just love this book so much. Alright, last but not least, in the YA romance category, I have You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao. When I was reading this book and talking about this book, I was saying that I've been avoiding this book because I heard that this book is sad. It is pretty sad, I want to say, but it's not really throughout the book. I feel like I cried and tear up a little bit toward the end of the book, but throughout the book I was just feeling like my heart is a bit heavy for Julie, the main character, because she is obviously grieving the death of her boyfriend. They both were in high school. They were, I think, a senior at the time, and they had this grand plan of what to do or what they're gonna do after high school when they go to college and stuff like that. And it was obviously cut short because Sam passed away unexpectedly. And the interesting premise of this book is that one day Julie just doesn't know who to talk to, so she decided to dial Sam's phone number, and lo and behold, somebody picked up and it was actually Sam. So all throughout this book is about kind of like their conversation on the phone together, and I feel like when I was reading it, I was just trying to figure out like how can they be connected if Sam actually passed away already. It was just a great book. I do have the second book in the series. I forgot what it's called now. Again, I feel like that book might be a little sad as well, so I've been avoiding that book even though I have it. I think I put it in my, I don't know, October or November TBR, but I didn't pick it up. I'm hoping that I will be able to pick it up and actually finish this book series. So this next category, I want to say it is probably like general fiction or maybe literary fiction, historical fiction kind of, because the first book is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I said that after I read this book, I want to watch the show, but I actually haven't. Maybe I should, because I have been kind of just rewatching shows that I love. I recently watched The Big Bang Theory, and then I finished the whole series, and then my husband was like, you should pick up some other show. You know, stop watching all of the shows that you love and you've watched already. So I might actually watch this next, I don't know. But anyways, I love this book because the format is a bit different. It is in a format of interviews, so you learn about the characters from other people's perspective. And if you don't know, this book is about Daisy, the main singer, and the Six, which is like a band that these brothers created, I think, and the studio kind of decided to mash them together because both of them were kind of like rising to their fame, and I think it'd be great to have them kind of like all together. It'd be interesting for me to watch the show because obviously the show is gonna be in a little bit of a different format, I believe. I think it's more kind of like a day-to-day conversationally, between the members of the band. So I think it'd be a bit different. So I just want to see how different it is. But like I said, I just love this so much because the interview format makes it like you reading a magazine instead of a book, so you just keep flipping. The next one in my list is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. I'm not really sure if this was a popular book. I know that at least in the past year that I've been reading again, nobody really talked about this book because it's not as popular as like Beartown or A Man Called Ove or My Friends, which is his newest published book. This book again is so wholesome. I think it's kind of hard to get into this book in the beginning because the main character is actually a 7-year-old girl who has a grandma who is her best friend and unfortunately passed away from cancer in the beginning of the book. And when the grandma passed away, this girl Elsa is tasked to deliver these letters from her grandma, and the letters that she was supposed to give out are for the people who live in her apartment or housing complex. There are a lot of characters in this book. They are very interesting character with interesting backstory, and we learn all about them in this book. And the other element that I feel like is very interesting and kind of different than some of the books that I have read is that the grandma and the girl Elsa has this strong bond because the grandma always tells this fairy tale story to Elsa about this land and the characters and the people who live in that land. And as you read the book, you see the similarity between the characters in that magical land to the residents in the same housing complex where all of them live. So it was just kind of interesting to see the connection once you kind of like read throughout the book. And again, it was just very heartwarming. And let me know if you've read this book because I feel like not a lot of people talk about this book, and I just love this book so much. And like I said, just beware, the beginning of the book is a little bit hard to get into, but just keep on reading. I think this is only my second book of his that I read, but if it keeps continuing, like if the trend keeps continuing, I think the next book that I will read from him is gonna be another 5-star. The next general literary fiction book that I read was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I don't really remember too much about the ending of this book. I actually got another copy for my aunt and I gave it to her over Christmas, so I think I might kind of like read the last few chapters just to remind myself what the ending of this book was. I don't know if you can tell, but I've been annotating and tabbing this book while I was reading it. It's just a very interesting book. It also has an interesting premise. If you have never heard of this book, it's about Nora who is just basically done with her life. She wanted to just basically end it, and one night she decided to take a bunch of sleeping pills, and I guess when she woke up she was in this kind of like limbo, I guess, and she was in front of this library called the Midnight Library. And when she enters, the librarian was telling her that this library is all about your life. All of the books that you see is kind of like an alternate life that you might be able to choose. You can pick it up, read it, enter this like alternate life, and if you like it better than your current life, you can choose that life and stay. If I were Nora, I wouldn't choose one and decided that that's the one. So I think she went through like, I believe 10 different lives, and it's basically kind of like playing out the different choice if she were to choose something different at like specific time of her life. It just has a lot of like life lessons that I feel like are very interesting and that I want to go back to. That's why I tap a bunch of them. But anyways, let me know in the comment below if you have read this book. I feel like people have loved this book, but I know that there's a smaller section of people that I follow either on Goodreads and sometimes on YouTube that don't really like the Midnight Library, and that is completely okay because not all books are gonna be the ones that you would fall in love with, but this is one of mine. And like I said, let me know if you have read this in the comment below. Okay, the next book that is in this category is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I feel like this one has been summarized as a retired woman who is befriending this giant Pacific octopus. Is that what it's called? I think it is. But it's not really like a friendship where they talk to each other. So if you're expecting that this octopus would actually talk to the main character, it's not gonna be talking to her. But anyways, this is about Tova, who is a retired woman. Like I said, her husband just recently passed, and the other tragic thing that happened in her life was that her son, her only son, went missing when he was 18. And I think if he were to live, he would be 48 because he went missing over 30 years ago and he was 18. The other element that I love about this book is that she is part of a book club of this small town, and there's, I believe, 3 or 4 other women. The topic that they talk about is about retiring. They talk about how or who is gonna take care of them when they are, you know, way older. And it kind of also makes me think about like, who's gonna take care of me when I retire and when I get way older and I can't really do much. Like, would somebody put me in a home, or somebody's gonna take care of me, like maybe my niece or nephew? It just kind of like bring up a bunch of like reflective question about my life and what I would do later on in like my golden years. I am not sure if Shelby Van Pelt has another book. I don't think she does. This is, I want to say, her debut novel. This book is also going to be adapted to a movie, and I think Sally Field is going to be Tova, and I cannot wait because I love Sally Field. And I think this is gonna be available on Netflix in May, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but I cannot wait to watch the movie because I've read the book and I loved it. So the last genre that I feel like is probably has the longer book stack is gonna be adult romance, and I'm already yapping at 42 minutes now, so I will grab the first book in the stack. This one is The Bright Test by Helen Hong. I have been yapping about this book so much because I just love Helen Hong's writing. She can really write the emotional connection between the two characters in writing, like in action. Like, they don't really communicate it like or talk, or like you don't really see the banter that kind of like solidified our emotional connection. It's all in the action, which I love. I also need to say that this is the second book in the Kiss Quotient book series. I don't think you really need to read the first one to read this, because this is the second book, like I said. But anyways, this is about Kai, who is autistic. He thinks that he's broken because he can't really express or say like his emotion and his feeling. He can't really say that he's sad or grieving something or loves somebody. So his mom is just kind of like sick of him being single and not wanting to be in a relationship. So what did she do? She went to Vietnam and found him a bride, which is Esmeralda or Esme. Esme knew that it's gonna be a challenge for her to seduce Kai, to kind of bring him out of his shell, but she wants to try because she has her own kind of like motive. She wants to change her family's life, and this is kind of like her ticket to do it. I just love Helen Hong's writing. I only have one book left of hers, which is The Heart Principle, which is the third book of this book series, and it is in my January TBR, but I've been avoiding to read it because I know that it's gonna be the last book that I have of Helen Hong's. I really wish she would come back to writing, hopefully sometime soon in the future, because her writing is just brilliant. I really love it. The next book that I have in my adult romance stack is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book of Kennedy Ryan that I've ever read, and I fell in love with her writing. The character in this book, the main one, is Yasmin, who is a mom of 2. She recently divorced her loving husband, Josiah, and I guess in this book they were kind of like contemplating whether that decision is a good one for them. And it is a second chance romance. And I just love reading about a married couple, or a couple who used to be married but now they're separated, and now they're kind of like contemplating if this is the right move for them. I just love how relatable the characters are. I'm not saying that I'm relating to Yasmin, but I just feel like the characters that I read in this book, Yasmin and also 2 of her friends, would be someone that I would know in real life. So I think that's how the story is just very relatable to me. I just love this book so much. I love Kennedy Ryan's writing. One of my favorite quote of the year was from this book, and I will leave it right here. I cannot wait to read the next book in the series, but this is the first book in the Skyline series. There's gonna be 3 books total. The first one is gonna be about Yasmin, the second one is gonna be about Soledad, and the third one is gonna be about Hendrix. And we learn a little bit about the other 2 women in this book because they are Yasmin's best friends, and I cannot wait to read the third book because that has the rich auntie vibe going on, and I'm hoping to be one of them in the future. The next one is The Rom-Comers by Katherine Center. I've kind of talked about this recently in my December reading wrap up. This book is again one of my favorites because anything that Katherine Center writes, I just love. This is about Charlie and Emma. Charlie is a famous Hollywood screenwriter and Emma is basically a writer, but she's a nobody. Charlie usually writes screenplay for like an epic movie, action, and kind of like a noir, black noir movie. Is that a genre? And this time around, he decided to write a rom-com screenplay and it was horrible. So Emma was going to be hired to help him fix the screenplay. And of course, Charlie being Charlie and he's famous, he's very well known in Hollywood, and all of his screenplays basically become like great movies. He doesn't want Emma's help, especially a help from like somebody that is unknown. But at the end, he kind of softened and he decided to say, yes, sure, Emma, help me with this screenplay. And the story goes from there. I just really love Katherine Center's books because the characters in the book always have a very interesting background story and they also have very interesting job, just like this one. Katherine Center's book is kind of like an auto read for me. I still have, I think, 4 or 5 of her books from like her backlist that I still need to read. And she's also coming out with a new book called The Shippers, or The Shipper, that is coming out in May. I do have an e-arc for that. Hopefully I'll be able to read it before the book comes out. Speaking of Katherine Center, let me talk about the next book that I read from hers that is a 5-star for me, and it is The Love Haters. This is her new book that was published in May of 2025. I actually got the international version, so it's a bit bigger than the normal one, which I don't really like. I might actually switch this for the actual paperback that is the US edition, so it has the same size as all of my other Katherine Center books. Pretty similar to the Rom-Comers. The characters have very interesting jobs. Hutch, which is the love interest, is a Coast Guard swimmer, rescue swimmer. And what is her name? Katie. She is a video producer for this big video company. Her video company was hired by the Coast Guard to create this kind of like recruiting documentary like commercial, and they sent Katie over to, I believe, somewhere in Florida, Key West. She was sent to Key West to work with Hutch and kind of like the Coast Guard team to create this whole production. But the thing is, Katie cannot swim, and obviously if she wants to shoot a commercial of the Coast Guard, she has to be able to swim because it's gonna be in the water. Katherine Center has always like this third act, not conflict, but just plot twists. And there's one in this one, and there's also one in Rom-Comers. And I just love it. It's kind of like out of the blue and out of place, but it just makes sense. Let's continue on with the next book. This one is Salty Spice and a Little Bit Nice by Cynthia Timothy. This is another debut novel from an Indonesian author who is based in Australia. I think I've come across Cynthia Timothy from just browsing through NetGalley for like new romance books that are coming out. And when I read the author's name, I instantly knew that she is Indonesian. And when I did a little dig, it's true, she is Indonesian based in Australia. So of course I decided to pick up this book because I want to support a fellow Indonesian author. Well, I'm not an author, but like a fellow Indonesian who is an author, I guess. Like I said, I came across Cynthia's book from NetGalley, so I was able to read the e-arc for this book. And because I love this book so much, I decided to get the physical copy. She's also coming out with a new book. I forgot what it's called. How to Get a Guy in 5 Weddings or something like that. I forgot. But it has a really cute premise as well, so I decided to pre-order that book. I also have the e-arc, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to read it before the book comes out. I think the second book is gonna come out in, I want to say May. So this book is about Ellie, who is the youngest of 2. Her mom is very controlling and very overbearing, and that is because her mom wants her to, I believe, work with the family's company, and anytime she got a new job, her mom just found a way to ruin it for her. So she decided to escape from her mother's tight reign to move kind of basically across the country. I think her family lives on the East Coast and she decided to move on the West Coast, and not really telling her mom where she decided to move to. But because she is pretty close to her brother knows where she is, and wherever she's moving to is basically the city that her brother's best friend lived in as well. So her brother asked his best friend Alec to kind of keep an eye on her, help her out if she needs anything. And Ellie and Alec kind of had a little bit of a history, I guess, in the past that ends with Ellie being heartbroken. So at first, obviously, she doesn't want to say yes to any of his help, but things come up. And I guess they kind of are working together to get like her business up and running, and the story goes from there. I just love this book because it has the Indonesian, or like the Chinese Indonesian kind of like family dynamic. My parents are not controlling and overbearing like Ellie's mom is, but things like just the Chinese New Year celebration and stuff like that, it just kind of hits home. The next one that I have was Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This is probably hands down one of my favorite adult romance book ever because I relate so much with the main character. I think her name is Ali. She is a professional organizer and she just recently divorced her husband and she has 2 kids. She actually came across this younger guy, I think at a dog park, and at first she was kind of hesitant because she doesn't really want to get involved with this guy. She has a complicated life. She just got a divorce. She has 2 kids and it was just, I guess, all too complicated for her to do, but she decided to kind of like treat this as a summer romance, a summer fling, because they both are very attracted to each other. I just feel like Ali would be someone that I would know in real life, similar to Yasmin from Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And I just love this book. It's a very easy read, and Ethan, the love interest, is just very cute. And usually I don't like reverse age gap romance because I personally cannot see myself with a younger guy, but it just works. This works because he's just very mature. He is very attentive to what Ali needs, and he doesn't really push or pressure her too much, I guess. Like, he understands that her life is complicated. She has 2 kids. She still has to deal with like her ex-husband because they obviously still have to co-parent their 2 kids and all of that, but he's just very golden retriever, is that the right like term? He's just very nice, very cute, and very understanding of like her whole life, and doesn't really, like I said, pressure her to do things and to do much with their kind of like attraction. Last but not least, maybe this doesn't come as a surprise, but it is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I know that some people don't really like this specific book, but I think this is one of my favorite Emily Henry's books so far that I've read. I think the romance was there. I think the relationship between Alice and Hayden were just really cute. I kind of understand why Hayden was kind of hesitant about, you know, his attraction with Alice, because they are, you know, going for the same job, and people are saying that the story of Margaret Ives are kind of boring, but I feel like it's not boring. It's kind of interesting. I just feel like there's so many characters from like her life that I don't know if it's necessary. I guess it is, but I just feel like when I was reading about her life, I needed to like take out a little notepad and like jot down all of the names from her family. I feel like there's just too many characters, but all in all, I think the story of Margaret is pretty interesting. The romance between Alice and Hayden were just so cute, and of course the ending of this book is very unexpected for me, and I feel like that is why I personally love it. Let me know in the comment below, which side are you on? Are you pro Great Big Beautiful Life, or are you on the con side because you don't really like it and you just think it's way too different than, you know, other Emily Henry books? But to me, this was a pretty great read. I did enjoy it, and I don't know if you noticed, but I got this book for $1 at my public library. I feel like a couple weeks after the book was published, maybe somebody read the book and hated it and decided to donate it to the library, and I was there at the perfect time and I got this for $1. And it is the Barnes & Noble special edition with the different color and also like the cute little end paper. Anyways, those are all of the books that I thought was a 5-star read for me in 2025. Let me know in the comment below if any of these books are also in your 5-star read for last year, and maybe some of these books are already in your TBR for 2026.